All right, welcome back to Fantasy Files 1054 or FFX54 for short. This is going to be our Week 9 running back rankings, and it's going to be a tough one because we have a lot of teams on bye, and a lot of these teams on bye have very good running backs. So we have the Browns with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt missing. We have Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard missing. Broncos backfield mess is going to be missing. Saquon Barkley, Najee Harris, and Jaylen Warren, and then CMC. And then whoever else is his backup. So we have a lot of big name running backs missing this week. So even though you're going to see some names on this list that you're not used to seeing, you got to remember that some of these guys might find their way into your flex because not only do these teams have a lot of running backs out, but they also have a lot of very relevant receivers that are going to miss this week. So keep an eye on these names that might be on your waiver wire, but we'll just hop right into the content and get moving with these rankings. So first off is going to be a pretty easy choice for us, because he's been absolutely dominating in the past few weeks. I mean, aside from his pedestrian 15-point average for the first 3 games, he's been on a tear ever since. And with the lingering injuries in his offense, with Keenan Allen sitting out Monday at practice, with Mike Williams out for sure, Josh Palmer is still on his way back to the lineup. So we have a lot of injuries and a very good matchup in the Atlanta Falcons. So Austin Ekeler should have a lot of success on the ground as well as through the air. So Austin Ekeler is going to be our number 1 on the week. Following Austin Ekeler in kind of a 1A, 1B situation is going to be Derrick Henry versus the Kansas City Chiefs, who are a very good matchup for the running back position, allowing 27 points to this position. And Derrick Henry with over 200 yards last week. There's not that much more that needs to be said with him. He's going to be an absolute stud in another very good matchup. So we're going to have Derrick Henry as a number 2 on the week. Right behind Derrick Henry, we have Josh Jacobs against, again, another very good matchup. He had a very slow week last week, but let's not forget, first of all, he had a very slow week, but so did this entire team. They put up a goose egg as a team as a whole. We had Devontae Adams doing nothing. We had Renfro doing nothing. We had Derek Carr doing nothing, etc., etc. So I think Josh Jacobs is in a perfect position to have a get-right game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are allowing 26.9 fantasy points per game to this position. And if you remember, the 3 games before last, Josh Jacobs was putting up 30-plus points from the running back position. So let's not overthink last week. I think they just had a very bad week as a team, and Josh Jacobs is in a good position to get right and kind of correct what he did or what he didn't do last week. So Josh Jacobs against the Jacksonville Jaguars will be our number 3 on the week. Right behind Josh Jacobs is going to be Alvin Kamara versus my Baltimore Ravens. In the middle of the pack here as far as matchup goes, and they're allowing 22.9 fantasy points per game. The only reason there's a couple of reasons I bumped down Alvin Kamara. I think that obviously he had an absolutely incredible performance. He looks so good on the field. He looks like vintage Alvin Kamara, putting up 40-plus fantasy points last week at the running back position. However, the Ravens, even though they have been the middle of the pack, we do have Raekwon Smith coming in, and he's going to bring a good element to this Russian defense, I guess, or just to the defense as a whole. But regardless of this, repeating these games, these massive games, usually don't happen frequently. And even though it's going to be at home, I think that the New Orleans Saints were just in a perfect position last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. So even though Alvin Kamara had an amazing week last week, we're not going to overreact, and we're going to put him still in our top 5, but at number 4 versus the Baltimore Ravens. Behind Alvin Kamara is going to be Travis Etienne going up against the Las Vegas Raiders, who are also a very good matchup, allowing the same amount of points as the Jags and the Bears in 26.9 to the fantasy point or to the running back position. And what we have to remember is that Travis Etienne is the new bell cow running back. He is the focal point of this offense moving forward, clearly, and he's going to have plenty of work in the receiving game. He's breaking massive plays every single game. So when you have a combination of being a center point of your offense, being involved in the receiving game, the running game, and you're producing at a very efficient level in all of these regards. So Travis Etienne is going to be hard not to rank this high, and going up against a very good matchup, Travis Etienne is going to be a smash play in our top 5 this week. Right behind Travis Etienne, and I actually had Aaron Jones ranked above Travis Etienne there for a minute, basically predominantly because of this matchup. But then when I look further into it, the matchup actually looks relatively even because the Raiders are allowing 26.9 fantasy points per game, and then the Lions are allowing 27.4. So fractional difference in how poor these defenses are. However, coming off of a 140 plus rushing performance that Aaron Jones had last week, and then he's going to take that to Detroit in a very good matchup for himself, and he's going to have the opportunity to produce again on a higher level. Another reason I bumped Aaron Jones down one spot behind Travis Etienne is I did see confirmation that Allen Lazard is back to practice, so we're going to have a little bit more passing volume this week than we did last. So it's going to be a very high-scoring game. I think Allen Lazard and Aaron Jones eats, but Aaron Jones is going to be his first time in our top 6 this year. Right behind Aaron Jones is going to be Dalvin Cook going up against the Washington Commanders, who are actually a very difficult matchup, allowing only 22.3 fantasy points per game to the position. But we did see Dalvin Cook produce at a very high level last week against the Arizona Cardinals with 25 fantasy points on the day. He had 5 targets, he had 5 receptions, he had a touchdown, he had 111 yards on 20 carries. So now with TJ Hockenson coming over to this offense, it's going to be a better offense as a whole. The Minnesota Vikings are quietly one of the best teams in the entire league. And going up against the Washington Commanders, I think Dalvin Cook is going to be in a very good spot to give you a solid fantasy point efficiency, production. God damn, I got to find a better way to say that. But he's going to have a very good fantasy week once again this week up against a good matchup. Not as a whole. Not positionally, but as a whole. This is going to be a good matchup for the Minnesota Vikings. They could take the lead quite early, which would result in a rushing game script for Dalvin Cook. So Dalvin Cook will be the number 7 on the week. Right behind Dalvin Cook, we have Kenneth Walker III. And it's honestly a perfect place for him to follow up Dalvin Cook because Dalvin Cook put up 25 points on the Arizona Cardinals on 20 rushing attempts with 111 yards, like we just said. And now Kenneth Walker is going to be at Arizona going up against the same team. And we've seen nothing but good results from Kenneth Walker since he has taken this starting running back role in Seattle. So as long as Seattle keeps up their efficiency on the offensive side of the ball, Kenneth Walker is going to have all of those red zone touches that we're looking for. He's not as big of a factor or really a factor at all in the passing game, which we don't love that. But that being said, pretty much every single game he's given us a touchdown. Every single game that he has started, he has given us a touchdown. And then 3 of the 4 games that he started, he has given us massive play touchdowns. So if this is what he's going to be doing on a week in, week out basis, Kenneth Walker is going to have to find himself into our top 8. Right behind Kenneth Walker, we are going to have Rhamondre Stevenson versus the Indianapolis Colts in a pretty solid matchup where they're allowing 24.1 fantasy points to the running back position. And we just continue to see Rhamondre Stevenson produce week in and week out. There was for a second a question with whether if Dameon Pierce, I just got a notification Van Jefferson is limited at practice, if that has any implications to you. But back to the running backs. We had a moment there for a second where we were not sure if Damien Harris would come back, assume that the starting role, and then take all of Rhamondre Stevenson's production out of the equation. But that's not what we've seen, and it's kind of quite the contrary. I'm going to give you guys... Actually, I'll just put it on screen right now. If you take a look at the production that Rhamondre Stevenson has had since taking over this starting role, and even honestly beforehand, like right here against the Baltimore Ravens, Damien Harris was healthy, and I'm pretty sure he was healthy here versus Green Bay as well. But since then, you've seen basically 20-plus points every single week from this man. So if this is going to be what he's doing on a week in and week out basis, Rhamondre Stevenson is going to give us no choice to put him in our top 10. And now that we have Damien Harris back and we see that Rhamondre Stevenson is still chugging away, that just gives us confidence for the rest of season. But here in week 9, going up against a pretty good matchup for Rhamondre Stevenson, Rhamondre Stevenson will be our number 9 on the week. Right behind Rhamondre Stevenson, we have Joe Mixon versus the Carolina Panthers, who are allowing 23.6 fantasy points to the position. You can see here on the left. There we go. You can see here on the left. Joe Mixon continues to have his struggles with running the ball behind this offensive line. We saw on Monday night the absolutely horrible performance by this offensive line and really the entire offense as a whole, pretty much putting up no production up against I mean, you can see it right here on screen. This is the defense that Joe Mixon was running against last week, and he only put up, if I'm not mistaken, it was like, I'm not even going to say it without looking. So up against this defense, you see here on the right, or I'm sorry, on the bottom left, he only rushed 8 times for 27 yards with 7 receptions and 32 yards. So although I do think that Joe Mixon has a brighter future ahead of him rest of season, I don't know if this is going to be the week for him to have that get-right game until I see this offensive line give him more to work with. So as much as it pains me, I mean, if you were following the channel preseason, we were really high on Joe Mixon, and we haven't been getting the results that we've been looking for. He's still been giving us that 10 to 15 with a spike 20 here and there, but Joe Mixon should be a lot better of a back, and this offense should be a lot better as a whole. So now with Ja'Marr Chase not in the offense anymore, this offense has taken a pretty decent, substantial step back as a whole, and Joe Mixon is not going to have those red zone opportunities that he does have when Ja'Marr Chase is there, and if he's not going to be able to get into the end zone, we're going to have to rank him all the way down here at number 10. So Joe Mixon against the Carolina Panthers is going to be our number 10 on week 9. Behind Joe Mixon, we have Leonard Fournette going up against the Los Angeles Rams, who have been doing very well against the run for the beginning of the season, allowing 20.7 fantasy points per game to this position. But Leonard Fournette doesn't have to be productive on the ground to give you points. He gets a lot of air yards. They call him the dump truck on the Fantasy Footballers podcast. If you guys, I'm sure you're familiar with that podcast. Great podcast, by the way. But they call him the dump truck because he gets so many dishes from Tom Brady with short yardage receptions. And if you're in a full PPR league, every single time he gets the ball dumped down to him, that's a point. So if he's going to get the ball dumped down to him 7 times, that's 7 points right off the bat. And then any yardage after that through the air and through the receiving game is going to be a bonus. And then touchdowns are going to take him into the 20-plus point category. So Leonard Fournette is going to have plenty of opportunities to produce. It's just a matter of what he does with those opportunities. So Leonard Fournette will be our number 11 going up against a difficult matchup in the Los Angeles Rams for Week 9. Behind Leonard Fournette is going to be Miles Sanders, which it is a little bit surprising that he's found his way this high up in rankings. And it was honestly surprising to me, but I really can't put him any further down than the number 12 position for the week, going up against the Houston Texans, who are the best matchup in the entire league. We saw Derrick Henry go for 200-plus against this defense last week. And even though it is Derrick Henry and there's a big gap in skill between Miles Sanders and Derrick Henry, you can't ignore the matchup. And when they're allowing 34 points to this position, and again, mind you, this is going to be on Thursday night, and the game script is also, it's in favor for the running back already. But with the Philadelphia Eagles steamrolling offense or teams the entire year, I think the game script lines up perfectly for Miles Sanders as well. I think that the Eagles go up very early, very fast. And I think that once they go up, we've seen them, unlike the Buffalo Bills, unlike the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, once the Eagles get a lead, they're more than happy with just running the clock out because they know they can run the ball as well. So I think Miles Sanders gets a ton of opportunities here and a ton of opportunities against the worst matchup in the entire league versus the running back position, and allowing 34 points is going to be very, very good for Miles Sanders this week. Coming off of a week where he had 9 rushes for 78 yards. So if those opportunities increase, his production will increase as well. Behind Miles Sanders, we have Dameon Pierce going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Same exact matchup Thursday night. And I think this is a very scary matchup for Dameon Pierce. I think that his skill and his production has been very solid ever since he's assumed the starting role. He's had an 18-point week, 25, 20, 15, 14. But this is going to be this is definitely going to be his hardest matchup to date since taking the starting job. So I think that the game script is going to kind of shift away from Dameon Pierce, and he's going to have those opportunities to take the ball and do what he does with it. But I think that it's going to be a little bit watered down of a version than we're used to seeing. So in this difficult matchup, we'll have Dameon Pierce as our number 13 on the week. All right, I'm just going to release both of these guys. Right behind Dameon Pierce, we have DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. And the reason I rank them back-to-back like that, like this, is not because I think that they're both going to play and they're both going to produce at this level. I think the reason I rank them like this is because I just got a notification on my phone that DeAndre Swift actually was limited today in practice, which we did expect because we saw him limited on the field last week. Now, being DeAndre Swift, he's still going to have those opportunities to score and take it to the house because of the skill set that he possesses. But until he's fully healthy, this is a very scary situation to play him. I have him in multiple leagues, and I'm honestly terrified to play him. I don't really have an option. But if he's going to be playing at a very limited pace, I mean, even if game time rolls around and the questionable designation comes off of DeAndre Swift, it's confirmed that he's going to play. Even then, this is a very scary player to start because we know that. I mean, we saw it last week. We know that he is still dealing with that injury and is a fraction of what he should be. Even Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Lions, said it himself. So the reason I have DeAndre Swift above Jamal Williams is because the talent really is that much better if he can get back to health. But you have to remember that we're recording this on November 2nd, which is the Wednesday leading up to the week. So until we have further news, this is something to monitor. But DeAndre Swift is going to be kind of on the fringe until we hear more. If DeAndre Swift does not play, Jamal Williams is going to be a smash play right in this range that you can throw in your starting lineup confidently. And he's one of the leading running backs as far as touchdowns scored on the year. So that's going to be something that we want a part of regardless of DeAndre Swift or not. So if DeAndre Swift does play, I think you still can play Jamal Williams based on the fact that of what we saw last week. So very scared to play DeAndre Swift, but if he is healthy, he's going to be where we have him ranked right now. Monitor it, however, during the week to see where this kind of shakes out. All right, behind DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, we have Jonathan Taylor. Again, another guy that I have that's very sad to rank him this low, but going up against a very difficult matchup, the second hardest matchup in the entire league, with 18 fantasy points per game to the running back position. That coupled with the fact that Jonathan Taylor, we saw him last week not getting the volume that we're used to because of his, I believe it's an ankle injury. Let me confirm that real quick. Didn't practice today and tweaked his ankle. Yeah, so this is an ankle injury he's still currently dealing with. And if Jonathan Taylor is going to play against this very difficult matchup and a very bad offense with Sam Ehlinger, we're going to have to temper our expectations. Now, one thing I will say is if he starts trending in the direction of not playing, you can swap out Deion Jackson for Jonathan Taylor in the 16th position and throw him into your lineup and feel confident because we saw what he could do when he is the lead back, especially with Nyheim Hines not in the picture anymore. So, again, another situation to monitor. I am just crossing my fingers and waiting for Jonathan Taylor to be Jonathan Taylor once again, but that's not going to happen until he's healthy. And with him missing practice today, he's kind of trending in that wrong direction. So go ahead, pick up Deion Jackson from your waivers and hold on to Jonathan Taylor. I know it's getting uncomfortable, and I know this because I traded for him very early in the season. He hasn't done anything, but Jonathan Taylor is going to be Jonathan Taylor. He just needs to be healthy and get that volume. So for now, he'll be our number 16. Right behind Jonathan Taylor, we have Raheem Mostert in a very good matchup going up against the Chicago Bears, allowing 26.9 fantasy points to this position. I know we had Jeff Wilson coming over, so again, something to monitor. I don't think he's going to be, I know for a fact he'll be on a snap count for this first week, him being Jeff Wilson. Raheem Mostert won't be competing this week in a very good matchup for those touches, but like I said in yesterday's video, I do think that Jeff Wilson is a lot better of a running back than Chase Edmonds, at least for this team specifically. So I think they definitely do use Jeff Wilson in the future. To see how they use him, that's kind of TBD. But for this week, in a very good matchup, Raheem Mostert is going to be our number 17, coming off of a slow week, but look for him to bounce back. Right behind Raheem Mostert, we have D'Onta Foreman against the Cincinnati Bengals in a very difficult matchup for the running back position, only allowing 20.4 fantasy points to the running back position. However, we have seen D'Onta Foreman we've heard him comped to be a baby Derrick Henry, and ever since he started in this role, he has been a baby Derrick Henry. Now, you have to remember that baby Derrick Henry has been going up against some very easy matchups, so that's kind of leading towards those massive fantasy point production games. But it's also one of those things where until proven otherwise, we're going to have to give him the benefit of the doubt. So we'll see this week what he does against his best matchup yet since taking this starting job from the scrub CMC. But until then, we'll have him ranked as the number 18, and he's going to be a starter in your lineup, especially in week 9 where there's a lot of players on bye. So throw D'Onta Foreman into your lineup with ease and see what he does. Right behind D'Onta Foreman is going to be Tyler Allgeier, surprisingly enough. He's going up against a very good matchup in the Los Angeles Chargers, second worst, allowing 29.2 fantasy points to this game, or to this position. And Tyler Allgeier is coming off of a very solid 2 weeks, to be honest with you. There for a second, even after Cordero injured himself, we saw him have kind of a slow start. However, one thing we do know about this Atlanta Falcons offense is they want to run the ball. That they're a run-first team. And in the past 2 weeks, he's gotten 16 carries for 50 yards of the touchdown, resulting in 11 fantasy points in a full PPR league. And then last week, we saw him get 14 carries, 39 rushing yards with 3 receptions, 46 yards, and a touchdown. So as long as he gets this volume, even though he's not efficient, I mean, he's very inefficient by the numbers that I just read off to you, he's still going to get the touches. He's still going to be the primary back in a rush-first offense. And in a very good matchup for the running back position, we're going to have to throw him as a number 19 running back on the week. Behind Tyler Allgeier is going to be Devin Singletary and the Buffalo Bills, going up against the New York Jets, who are, again, a very good matchup, or I'm sorry, a very difficult matchup if you're going up against them, allowing 22.2 fantasy points per game. Now, one thing I will say is ever since Breece Hall went down, Zach Wilson looks horrible. This offense looks like a shell of what they were. And the reason this is important to Devin Singletary and his production is because I think that the numbers for the defense and the New York Jets on the defensive side of the ball, I think they were skewed because they were doing so well on offense. It was keeping their defense off of the field. Now when you see Zach Wilson throwing these egregious picks, it's showing, or it's resulting in a lot worse of a defensive performance on the New York Jets side of the ball. And on top of that, the Buffalo Bills are going to steamroll the New York Jets if they're going to keep playing like this. And if that's the case, then we're going to see Devin Singletary get plenty of touches in the running game moving forward. Now, one thing we do want to touch on is that Nyheim Hines is going to be in Buffalo moving forward and take that receiving back role. Obviously, this is going to hurt James Cook much more than Devin Singletary, but it will take some of those receptions away from Devin Singletary. But that being said, it's not going to be this week. Nyheim Hines still has to get up to speed. He still has to figure out the scheme, the playbook, and everything above. So this week, again, we're not too worried about all of those trade deadline moves that happened yesterday. It's going to take those guys some time unless they're on the defensive side of the ball. But for this week, going up against the New York Jets, Devin Singletary will be our number 20 running back on the week. Right behind Devin Singletary, we have Antonio Gibson, who has taken the leading back role in Washington once again, which I think is the right move. I mean, Brian Robinson seemed very slow, and he kind of looks just... He doesn't look the same speed as Antonio Gibson, and he can't catch the ball at all. And if we look back at the past 2 weeks for the production that Antonio Gibson has had, actually, I'm just going to read over his scores in the past. So week 1, starting with week 1, we have 20 points for Antonio Gibson, 12, 11, all solid. Brian Robinson comes back, takes that role from him. He goes 9, 6.9, 8.3. So very, very low point fantasy production there for 3 weeks while Brian Robinson is a starter. But then since he's been demoted again, we have Antonio Gibson coming through with 16.7 and 20.7. So Antonio Gibson has clearly taken the lead role in the Washington Commanders backfield and going up against the Minnesota Vikings in a fairly decent matchup here. Actually, no, it's a very difficult matchup. Is this top 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so a top 10 matchup, only allowing 21.3 fantasy points per game to the running back position. But again, Antonio Gibson has a lot of work in the receiving game. He had 7 receptions for 58 yards and a touchdown last week. So regardless of the matchup, it's going to be a game where they are playing from behind, and this is going to keep Antonio Gibson on the field. He's going to be a guy you're going to want in your starting lineup this week. Right behind Antonio Gibson is going to be Michael Carter in this tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills, only allowing 19.3 fantasy points per game. he's still going to be the receiving back in this offense and get all the valuable touches. Now, I do think James Robinson is kind of the Brian Robinson to Antonio Gibson. He's going to be that goal line back and the short yardage back. But I think that the more valuable touches are going to go to Michael Carter, but it's going to be a very difficult matchup. So we're going to bump him down all the way down to be the number 22 on the week. But if you didn't see what Zach Wilson was doing last week with the ball, let me just fill you in. Zach Wilson is horrible, throwing the ball directly to the defenders. And that makes it scary to play anybody from this offense at all. Tyler Conklin is a guy that you can throw in your lineup, but other than that, it's hard to play anybody with Zach Wilson playing like he was last week. So until I see it, play out any differently, I'm going to have a tough time putting any of these guys in my starting lineup. That being said, if they do find themselves moving the ball at all, Michael Carter will give you some fancy points. And in the tough week with all these buys, you might have to play Michael Carter in your lineup. I'm going to release both these guys, much like I did the Lions. Right behind Michael Carter is going to be Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery. Unlike DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, injuries are not in the question for these two guys. The reason they're back-to-back is because they legitimately are a 1A and 1B is what it's looking like. And to be honest with you, it's looking like Khalil Herbert is the 1A, which is why we have him ranked above David Montgomery. And personally, I would rather play Khalil Herbert over David Montgomery, and I think it continues to have a workload shift towards Khalil Herbert's way. And going up against the Miami Dolphins, who are a fairly decent matchup, allowing 23.7 fantasy points to the running back position, I think Khalil Herbert is actually in a very good spot to kind of take control of this backfield and move forward. Another thing I will say is this isn't like a one or the other type of situation. A lot of times when I rank people back-to-back like this, it's saying, I'm not sure which one is going to get the ball, but whichever one gets the ball is going to be the valuable guy. That's not the case here. I think both of these guys could be very valuable in this decent matchup against the Miami Dolphins because the offense that we're seeing the Chicago Bears run is almost like 2019 Ravens-esque in the sense that it's a very creative run scheme and they are running the ball effectively with the rushing quarterback and they're running the ball often. So if they're going to run the ball this much, there's going to be enough touches to go around to support both running backs. And I think you actually can start both of these guys in a favorable matchup. So Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery are going to be our number 28 and 29 on the week. Right behind David Montgomery, we have Eno Benjamin. This is under the assumption, again, that James Conner is going to be out. I just checked his injury status, and it's still looking like he's trending towards not playing. So if that's going to be the case, again, all these rankings are subject to change. Please make sure you come to the channel Sunday morning and get ask all of your start sit questions. We will be live, so you can ask those to me personally. So again, go down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you get that notification when we do go live Sunday morning so you can ask these questions and like the video while you're at it. But anyways, the Seattle Seahawks against the run are very bad, and they're allowing 26.3 fantasy points to this position. I say it every single week, but the Arizona Cardinals run so many plays, which results in so much volume for these players that are going to be starting on this offense. So Eno Benjamin is going to have plenty of opportunities to succeed against the Seattle Seahawks in Week 9. So Eno Benjamin is actually a guy that I think you should be putting into your lineup and not really thinking twice about it in Week 9. So Eno Benjamin is going to be our number 25 on the week. Behind Eno Benjamin, we have Kenyan Drake in the assumption that Gus Edwards is going to be missing. Right now, it's looking like he's going to be missing. Before I get into Kenyan Drake, if Gus Edwards is completely fully healthy, going into Monday Night's Football, we can put Gus Edwards right above Devin Singletary behind Tyler Allgeier. However, the issue with this is that they are playing Monday night, so you can't wait all day Sunday to pick one of these backs to play. The only scenario that this works out that you can play the Ravens running back is if you have both Gus Edwards and Kenyan Drake. However, if we get news ahead of time that either Gus Edwards, let's just assume he does miss, because I think that's how it's trending, then you can play Kenyan Drake as a number 26 running back on the week. And he's a guy that is going to get all of the touches out of this backfield because, frankly, the Ravens have no one left to hand the ball to. They don't have Rashad Bateman. They have Mark Andrews dealing with an injury, even though it's looking like he will play. So with all of these injuries on the Ravens offense, in a rush first offense, I think Kenyan Drake is going to be in a good spot to succeed, even in a difficult matchup against the New Orleans Saints, allowing only 20.2 fantasy points per game to this position. So keep an eye on the injury status with Gus Edwards, but for now, we'll have Kenyan Drake as our 26th running back for Week 9. Right behind Kenyan Drake, we have A.J. Dillon working his way back into the top 30, and let me just start off by saying this is because matchup alone. I hate the volume that A.J. Dillon has been seeing. I think he should be getting way more touches, and if he was on the Ravens or any other team that needs a running back desperately, he'd be a stud running back moving forward, but he's not, and he's not getting the touches. But in this matchup, I think it's very possible that the Green Bay Packers go up. You know, the Detroit Lions are allowing 27.4 fantasy points to the position, so it's possible the Packers go up early. They run the clock out with a 1-2, a two-headed horse in Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon like they did at the beginning of the season. And if that opportunity presents itself in a good matchup, then A.J. Dillon will present himself as a good fantasy option for you in the flex this week. So A.J. Dillon is in consideration for this week, unlike he has not been in the past. So A.J. Dillon will be our number 27 on Week 9. Right behind A.J. Dillon, we have Darrell Henderson coming up in pretty much the same exact spot we had him ranked last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are a very difficult matchup for the running back position, allowing only 19.1 fantasy points per game. Now, I will defend Darrell Henderson one more week. I'm going to give him one more week of leeway because if you don't remember last week heading into the games, Darrell Henderson was nursing an injury. It was kind of a late decision where we weren't too sure if he was even going to play. He ended up playing and then not really. So he split carries with Malcolm Brown and I forget the other guy's name. You guys will have to remind me in the comments below, but that pretty much should tell you all you need to know is he split carries with people we're not used to seeing him split carries with. So even though he basically did nothing last week, we have to give him the benefit of the doubt one more time. Now, if he does nothing again 1 week removed from that injury that he was dealing with last week, then Darrell Henderson might be a drop candidate. But I don't think that's the case. I think Darrell Henderson is going to be that lead running back. We didn't see the Rams trade for a running back before the deadline. So if Darrell Henderson steps back into that lead back role, then he could flip the script from being a useless commodity to a very valuable fantasy commodity on your bench. So in a very difficult week, I'm okay with you throwing him into the flex if you have to. Behind Darrell Henderson is going to be CEH again for one more week. I think Isaiah Pacheco is taking over, and until I see it in front of my face, I can't give him the respect of ranking him above CEH just based off of the fact that CEH produced for us early on in the season. He's getting the red zone touches, but I don't think you should be starting anyone from this Kansas City backfield right now anyways. I think Isaiah Pacheco is a good stash. The fact that he's played 8 weeks and he's taken that role from CEH as a starter, I think that's good as far as direction of trend. But for right now, until we see a full takeover, there's a three-headed backfield and a pass-first offense. And unless one of these guys falls into the end zone, it's going to be tough to get any real value out of them. So CEH is going to be our number 29 on the week for one more week, but I really would like to avoid playing CEH at all costs. And I would like to start Joshua Palmer in the flex position over CEH, if that gives you kind of an idea of where I feel about really this entire tier as a whole. So play these guys if you have to, is what I'm saying. And then again, right behind CEH is going to be Brian Robinson, who falls in the same category. He's going to have those goal line opportunities. I was between Brian Robinson and James Robinson, so you can kind of tell how I feel about those two guys right now, but pretty much they need a touchdown to have any real value. So again, if you're in a pinch, you can play either one of them, but if you have the opportunity to start a wide receiver in your flex over any of these guys in this bottom tier, please do so. But that being said, we are going into Week 9 starting tomorrow night with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Houston Texans on Amazon Prime. But there's a lot of injury implications that are going to kind of play out as this week plays out, I guess. So make sure you come and stop by on Sunday morning to hang out, first of all, kind of shoot the shit, It's a very fun stream that we host. We're going to be placing some of our pick'ems. We're going to be placing some DFS bets, etc., etc. I don't even know what we're going to get into yet. We don't really know until the morning of. But while we're doing that, we're going to be answering all of your guys' questions and kind of sifting through all the injuries that shake out throughout the week. So appreciate everyone who has shown support to the channel. Please like the video. If you do like the video, it helps me out a lot. Good luck going into week 9. This is kind of where we're transitioning between if you're going to be able to make the playoffs or if you're destined for failure. So good luck to all of you. I know this is a pivotal week. It's a tough week with all these buys, but I'll see you guys Sunday morning. Until then, peace out.